Every trace of normality had been stripped away by the war, leaving behind a Europe of ruins and shadows. For the German women taken prisoner, visions of punishment and humiliation accompanied the thought of capture, not relief. They expected the cold machinery of revenge, the brutality of victors, that silent reminder of their loss. But a different reality awaited when they were marched into American custody. Their first shower on American soil is a story about more than soap and water. It is about two worlds colliding. One built on despair, the other offering dignity, unexpectedly. Imagine the weight they carried stepping into captivity. The memory of bombed cities etched within them. Hunger gnawed at their bodies, every heartbeat an echo of loss. They braced for more suffering. Yet what unfolded was not cruelty. It was something far stranger, almost impossible to comprehend. Soap lathered, clean water flowed, and for the first time in years, their bodies felt human again. So simple in form, yet so profound in meaning, that moment of astonishment would remain with them forever. A reminder that humanity could appear in the most unexpected places, even in war's darkest shadow. In silence, they were rounded up, their possessions stripped to the barest essentials, and marched under the watch of soldiers whose language sounded foreign and sharp to their ears. A march into the unknown, that is what each step toward the transport ships felt like. For many, the journey itself was laced with dread. In hushed tones, stories circulated about what awaited them on foreign soil. Would they face retribution for the horrors their country had unleashed? Would they be starved as punishment? The sea voyage stretched endlessly, every crashing wave against the hull seeming to echo their fears. As they crossed the Atlantic, days blurred into nights, confined in cramped quarters that reminded them of the war's suffocating grip. Some prayed silently, others stared blankly at the water as if it might swallow their anxieties whole. They imagined American camps as grim extensions of captivity, where punishment would be relentless, where their status as both women and enemies would strip them of all dignity. Heavier than chains, the unknown weighed upon them. And yet, a flicker of curiosity remained beneath the fear. What would life truly be like behind America's fences? None could have imagined that their arrival would hold not cruelty, but a bewildering glimpse of compassion, one that would leave them questioning everything they thought they knew about their captors. Unreal, it felt, when the shoreline of America finally emerged, as though they had drifted into another world entirely. With an order and calmness that seemed impossible after years of rubble and smoke in their homeland, the docks stretched out. Instead of soldiers thirsting for vengeance or angry mobs, there were uniforms that looked disciplined yet strangely unthreatening. Details that unsettled them with their gentleness caught their eyes as the women were led off the ships. Neat rows of trucks, the smell of food drifting from somewhere nearby, even the sight of distant towns untouched by war. Unscarred and intact, everything felt like a jarring reminder of all that had been lost in Germany. They expected the cold clang of iron at the camp gates, a descent into darkness, but the barracks were startlingly clean, the fences straight and almost clinical. Some guards even nodded politely, their expressions absent of scorn. It was not exactly kindness, but a restraint that confused them. Could this really be captivity? They had braced themselves for cruelty. Yet the first hours in America offered something far stranger, an ordered environment where survival did not feel like a daily gamble. That quiet realization was both a comfort and a mystery. With an unsettling rhythm, the first mornings in the camp unfolded a rhythm none of the women had anticipated. A strict but predictable order existed instead of chaos or deprivation. While plain, the uniforms they were given were clean and intact. Meals came at regular hours. Served in portions larger than many had seen in years, the food was simple but nourishing, almost decadent compared to the meager scraps of wartime Germany. Bread that was soft and fresh was tasted by some. With disbelief, others held steaming mugs of coffee in their hands, the warmth seeping into bodies long accustomed to hunger and cold. Around routine work, daily life revolved, gardening, sewing, cooking, or helping with maintenance inside the camp. As structure, a way to fill the long hours, these tasks were framed, not as punishment. The cruelty they feared was lacking, though discipline was firm. Guards barked orders occasionally, but violence was absent and punishment rare. Slowly, their minds began to wrestle with the paradox: captivity that offered stability, fences that contained but did not crush. Yet amid this uneasy adjustment, rumors began to circulate of something that stirred more anxiety than relief. That they would soon be led to the bathhouse, word spread, and with it a wave of fear none dared speak aloud. In nervous tones, the whispers began quietly, passed from bunk to bunk until the entire barracks buzzed with unease. The Americans were preparing them for showers, the guards had said. To outsiders, this might have sounded harmless, even merciful. But for women who had lived under the shadow of the WWII, the word *shower* carried a darker echo. They knew the stories, had heard of the camps where prisoners were marched toward false bathhouses never to emerge again. The mere suggestion of lining up for such a thing quickened their hearts and tightened their throats. Some tried to dismiss it, that America was not Germany, that these camps were not death factories. Yet the thought lingered like smoke in the back of their minds. Were the guards' polite gestures a mask for something far more sinister? No one voiced the terror fully. But it was there in the silence that spread when the subject arose. What awaited them beyond those doors? Clean water, or something far worse? They would not know until they saw it for themselves. Heavier than any chain, the uncertainty gnawed at them. In silence, they lined up, each step carrying the weight of a dread they dared not name. The gravel crunched beneath their shoes as the guards motioned them forward, their faces unreadable. For the women, the short walk to the bathhouse stretched endlessly, every second thick with the memory of whispered horrors. Some clasped their hands tightly together, muttering silent prayers. Others kept their eyes fixed on the ground, unwilling to glimpse what waited ahead. With every step, the structure loomed larger, plain and unremarkable to the outside eye. Yet to them, it might as well have been a chamber of fate. Faintly of soap, the air smelled, but that only deepened their unease. Was it a cruel disguise or genuine? The line shuffled forward, hearts racing faster than footsteps, each woman imagining what might come when the doors shut behind them. A few exchanged nervous glances, searching desperately for reassurance but finding none. Exaggerated seemed every motion of the guards, every pause filled with menace. By the time they reached the entrance, a silence had fallen so deep it was almost suffocating. They braced themselves for the worst, crossing that threshold, convinced survival was no longer certain. With a hollow thud, the door closed behind them. And for a moment, the world stood still. Every muscle tightened, breaths came shallow, eyes darted across the tiled room searching for hidden threats. Then came the hiss of pipes, sharp, metallic, unnerving. Some flinched, clutching each other's arms, bracing for agony. But instead of poison or choking fumes, the first droplets of water struck their skin, cool and clean. Sharp with disbelief, gasps escaped into the air. Slowly, the stream thickened, pouring down in steady warmth, washing away the grime of years. Trembling fingers were raised to her face by one woman, touching lather where real soap foamed against her skin, her tears mixing with the water in a confusion of grief and relief. Not with screams, but with muffled sobs and nervous laughter the room filled a chorus of emotions too tangled to separate. Some stood frozen, unable to trust what their senses told them, while others surrendered to the unfamiliar comfort, scrubbing with frantic energy as though trying to erase the war itself. Overwhelming felt the shock of simple cleanliness, almost cruel in its gentleness. For in that moment they realized captivity in America was not a descent into death, but a bewildering, unexpected return to life. When the water finally ceased and the women stepped out, a freshness they had nearly forgotten existed was carried by their skin. To them, the faint scent of soap clung, so ordinary to Americans, yet almost unimaginable to those who had come from bombed-out towns and filthy cellars. In Germany, water had often been icy, rationed, or fouled with debris. Soap was a treasure, sometimes traded like currency, sometimes entirely absent. Here, in a foreign land that was supposed to be hostile, both had been given to them in abundance. As if they had stumbled into a dream, the contrast left them unsteady. Memories surfaced of washing in freezing rivers during winters, of wiping soot and dust with nothing but rags, of going to bed with the stink of war on their skin because there was no choice. Now a simple kindness had seeped warmth into their bones, a kindness that felt more shocking than cruelty would have. A trick, some whispered, surely punishment must follow such indulgence. Yet the truth was far stranger. A comfort their homeland could no longer provide had been chosen for them by the United States, and that comfort unsettled them more than deprivation ever had. Days passed, and the showers became part of a rhythm none of the women had expected to find in captivity. At first, each time carried with it the same flicker of dread. But gradually, its grip was loosened by the fear, replaced by something resembling relief. They learned this ritual was not a cruel trick, but a routine woven into the order of camp life. A steady presence became cleanliness, once a rare luxury. As if the very act of washing restored not only their bodies, but fragments of dignity the war had stripped away. After each visit, the barracks filled with quiet conversations, even laughter, though hesitant at first. They compared the softness of their skin, the smell of soap lingering on their hands, marveling at sensations they had forgotten belonged to ordinary life. For many, it was the first time in years they felt remotely human, no longer defined only by loss and survival. The camp was still a prison, but within its fences, they found a rhythm that dulled the sharp edge of fear. Slowly, against all expectations, they began to adjust to a captivity that carried with it the unsettling weight of kindness. Years later, when they spoke of their captivity, the memories of watchtowers and barbed wire faded into the background, but the image of that first American shower never left them. It was not simply the lather of soap between their fingers or the sensation of water on skin. It was the shock of being treated as human when they had expected the opposite. A dissonance so sharp it carved itself into memory. For women who had braced themselves for cruelty, the discovery of unexpected compassion felt almost unbearable, as if their captors had granted them a gift they no longer believed they deserved. With tears, some described the moment, recalling how the water seemed to wash away not only dirt but a portion of their fear. With disbelief, others spoke of it, confessing that they had questioned their own senses, convinced it was a fleeting illusion. Yet on one truth, all agreed: that simple act of bathing became the symbol of their captivity in America. Not the guards, not the fences, but the startling realization that dignity could be offered in the unlikeliest of places. Long after the war was over, it remained a memory that defined their understanding of humanity's contradictions.